Hello and welcome to another episode of Educators, Performers, Creators Show. My name is Paulino Brenner. This is edition number 12. And I have here with me a talented artist and puppeteer from the Twin Cities, Anne Sawyer-Aitch. And she has studied Commedia Dell'Arte and improvisational theater at Oberlin College, but graduated from University of Wisconsin-Madison with a BA in Latin American Studies and Creative Writing. She also went on to study creative writing at the University of Arizona in the M.F.A program. She has traveled and studied in Spain, the University of Granada, Mexico, Guadalajara and Oaxaca, and Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, everywhere. Currently, Anne is a Minnesota State Arts Board roster artist and Puppeteer-At-Large, and she creates her own shows under the name Magic Lantern Puppet Theater. Welcome to Anne. Hola, Anne.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien, gracias. Thank you for taking time off your Sunday to be with me.
It's a delight. You make great coffee.
Thank you. I'm working on it, you know. Well, I read a little bit of your bio, and we saw some of your studies. And I see some creative writing there, and I see some Latin American studies and Commedia Dell'Arte. But what about the puppets?
Oh, well, you know, until recently there weren't a lot of programs for puppets out there in the United States. There are a few now. But back when I was a young, raring thing, we didn't have a lot of degrees in puppetry, and I didn't even know I wanted to be a puppeteer. So I was just all over the place trying things and seeing what I liked. And I stumbled on some puppeteers back in 1996 when I was auditioning for a show, and the rest is history for me.
Great. So tell us more about that beginning. How did you become a puppeteer?
Okay. Well, back when I moved back to the Twin Cities from Arizona in the creative writing program, I was looking to do some theater again because I've been doing that pretty much since I was a kid. But I had been talking to a friend and saying I really want something that's a little more visual because there's a part of me that's very word oriented, but there's another part of me that's very hands-on and loves visual things, and I hadn't been able to find something that fed that. And a friend of mine said, well, you know, I know some guys who are putting together a dinner theater puppet extravaganza. And I thought, wow, that sounds nuts. I'd like to try that. And so I went to this audition, and it was for a show called Madame Frou-Frou's Cafe of Love. And it's a piece about this woman who just sort of hosted these soirees, and she had this staff of puppets. They were all bunraku puppets, which means that the puppet goes in front of the puppeteer, and the puppeteer is wearing a black hood and manipulates the arms and legs. They were trying to replace their Madame Frou-Frou, and the previous puppeteer had gone to Paris, oddly enough. And so I auditioned for that, and I said, look, I don't know anything about puppets, you guys. I love the idea, but I have no clue. And they said, don't worry, we'll train you. Let's just, and they let me look at the puppet, and they told me a little bit about who she was, and they said, no, just try a voice. And I said, oh, hello, I am Madame Frou-Frou, welcome to our cafe. And they were sort of thunderstruck. They said, that's exactly the same voice the other lady did. How did you do that? And tapped into my inner frou-frou. So they trained me, and then after that, I just got really hooked. I just really wanted to keep. I started watching other puppeteers and going to puppet events and looking at what Heart of the Beast was doing and Bare Bones People and stuff, and just sort of learned by watching and doing.
Right. And
yeah.
So from there, you just mentioned a couple of groups, big groups here in the Twin Cities, Heart of the Beast and Bare Bones. So you have collaborated with these groups and others. You have collaborated with many groups. can you tell me more about the different experiences? What were some of those experiences collaborating with different groups?
Sure. Well, the first thing that comes to mind was, I mean, you know, that group that I started with was called Gallumph Interactive Theater, and I believe you've interviewed one of those people as well, Chris Griffith. He was one of the founders of that. And
Yes.
so, you know, Chris really taught me an awful lot about puppet construction and things like that. And also, you know, he was really great at art, you know, arts curriculum development as well. Heart of the Beast was very formative. I mean, when I was in high school, I went to South High, which is very close to where Heart of the Beast Theater is, and so I saw the May Day parades early in my teen years, which I always thought were really super cool, but never thought, I mean, I thought I'd love to do that, but it never really occurred to me that I could. You know, that was a possibility for me. And so when I started hanging out with all these puppet people, I saw more up close, you know, about the workshops and everything, and gradually it dawned on me that maybe I could try doing that. And it took me a while, but I did eventually become a May Day staff member. I actually got to lead sections and design them and work with hundreds of people to create a section of the parade. And so that was wonderful. I learned about large puppet construction and met a whole lot of wonderful, really wonderful people. And they're still, you know, I work with them still, you know, in various settings. And I'm still part of the May Day puppet pageant. Usually I'm the narrator and one of the two narrators, and there's usually an English and a Spanish, and I've done both English and Spanish parts. And usually on stilts, but last year we didn't do stilts, so I don't know what's up with that.
It changes. Okay, so what do you think are some of the differences mainly in the artistic process when you work as part of a big collective like the May Day parade and the ceremony, and as opposed to developing your own work? And do you have a preference?
You know, I don't. I think they're really different, and each of them have their good parts and their parts that are not so good. And okay, so the good parts of working by yourself is that you can really go off on your own ideas and develop them as far and as crazy as you want to go. But it can be a little lonely sometimes, and it's helpful to have an outside eye. So you know, those are the two sides of that coin. When you're working in a collaborative group, what's really important is that there be a sense of good connection, I think. If you have that good connection, some sense of friendship or trust or respect, then the collaborations can be really wonderful. And I find the more I work in our community, I know like who I work well with, and you know, and that just makes a big difference in the collaboration quality, you know, in terms of the experience itself and just what comes out. So I think that's kind of important. And you know, the outside eye thing happens when you're in a group, but also, you know, there's some give and take. You have to, you know, be willing to say, I'll let go of my idea because that idea is better. And that way you tap into the collective genius, you know.
Right, right. So you've done many collaborations with many groups, and as you said, you led hundreds of people in a session of the May Day parade. Yep. But what haven't you done? What is that collaboration that you would like to do in the future? Where or with who? If you have a collaborator in mind, who would that be?
Well, actually, there's a couple of things that are in the works right now. Julie Boada, who I just adore. She's a lovely lady, very talented, and I've worked with her in several other settings, mostly educational settings, sometimes in May Day. But she and I have a couple of ideas. One is that we just recently finished working along with her husband Gustavo at Metro Deaf, which is a sign language school, or it's a school where people sign. That's the major. American Sign Language is the first language, and we did we made color shadow puppets, and we, you know, had the kids make their own shows, and that was really wonderful. And we studied a little bit of sign language beforehand so that we could at least say some things, you know, like good job and hello and how are you and red and yellow, blue, you know, that kind of stuff. But now what we'd like to do, we also performed for them, and we had ASL interpreters, but we've talked, the three of us, about creating a piece that's completely visual, that would communicate both for ASL audiences, but then also for ELL, you know, audiences, English language learners. Something that would be universal. And so that's something we're talking about, and we aren't sure yet what form that will take. If it will be hand puppets or a shadow and hand puppet thing, you know, the sky's the limit, so we just have to get together and dream. And the other thing Julie and I talked about last night, we were just in this beautiful winter lantern festival that happened in Minneapolis, and I'm sure, you know, anybody who's been following Heart of the Beast, it's all over Facebook today, all the beautiful pictures of giant animal lanterns. And Julie and I are thinking about applying together to the Bare Bones Halloween show next year to work as a team on making some big lanterns. And I've made smaller ones. I don't have the experience that Julie does, and so I'm looking forward to learning from her. So that could be really, I'm excited about that, learning something new. You know.
Wow, that's great. I have studied some American Sign Language myself, and I love the language, and it's one of my dreams to incorporate it in some form. I did a show a couple of years ago where I was allowed to tell a story both in Spanish and a little bit of sign language. Actually, no, it was in English and sign language, and that was kind of fun. But I would love to do in the future something a little more integrated. I like the idea of something universal, like just visual. But I would like to be part of something using sign language. Huh? What?
We'd love to have you if you want to be part of it.
Yeah, I want to use sign language. I want to learn, you know, because when you get to use it, you get to learn more. So I still have to develop lots of American Sign Language skills, but I think it could be great. I want to be, you know, I think my dream sometime would be to do a show just in sign language. I think that could be so, or do storytelling at least. It's very hard. It's very hard to tell stories in a different language, as you probably know. But American Sign Language is a beautiful language that really connects. I connect with it a lot. But
I've seen you perform in different languages, and you do it beautifully. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I try. I love languages. But you mentioned now in a few times about constructions. You learn to make how to make some puppets from Chris, with Heart of the Beast, bigger puppets, and now working on bigger lantern puppets with Julie. Do you have to make, or do you have to learn to make your own puppets to be considered a puppeteer? That's my, my philosophical question of the day.
Well, as I probably said earlier, you know, there are two schools of thought on that. I know one friend mentioned to me that she has a collaborator who never, ever builds anything. She just goes online to eBay and buys her puppets. So, I mean, her end-all and be-all is to perform. And there are also found object puppeteers who perform whole shows with just stuff from their kitchen junk drawer or whatever, and that's considered puppetry too. So I wouldn't say you have to be, I mean, the whole part of being a puppeteer is giving life to an object, right? At least that's part of the definition. However, I love making my own puppets, and I wouldn't want to be a puppeteer if I couldn't make puppets. I really enjoy figuring out how I want to make something work. I love paper mache and sewing and embroidering and rubber tie and bamboo, and I just love getting in there and getting dirty and making stuff. And I like the process of making stuff with people and also alone. It's just a very, it satisfies something um, that I need to work with my hands. So it's not enough for me to just do words. That was one thing I found in graduate school creative writing, that words are one thing, and I like to tell a story with, but I also am a visual person, and I'm also a person who really needs to work with their hands. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so make your own puppets then. I have worked with puppets. I have worked at Heart of the Beast, and I have also learned a little bit of puppet movement.
Okay.
And recently I have worked with Margot McCready, which was a wonderful experience, contributing with my clowning to her on-time circus show, which we're doing again this summer. And it was a lot of fun, and I always think, should I not? I'm on the fence of being more, getting more into the world of puppetry. I just think that it would take me, I'm too critical. It would take me too much to learn to do something that I would be satisfied performing with. I think I could get more into found objects or object manipulation type of puppetry. We'll see.
Well, you're very gifted as a physical actor, so I could see how, using your word ability and your verbal abilities and your physical abilities, do you really need puppets? I don't know if you do.
I am the puppet.
You are a puppet.
I am the big tall puppet.
Yeah.
But I'm also an educator, and since we're here in Educators, Performers, Creators Show, I wanted to ask you a little more about the artist educator part of yourself, because you also do not only shows but also art residencies. And I wanted to know more, how did that start? Is there a way to learn that? You learn on the go?
Well, before I worked as a puppeteer, before I discovered puppetry, I did teach English as a second language to Spanish-speaking communities in Tucson. And then when I came back to Minneapolis, I taught Spanish for a while, beginning Spanish, to adults who were, looking to learn it for fun or for, travel, that kind of thing. And so I had some teaching skills under my belt. I think it's useful to learn to teach anything, because it will give you skills if you want to become an artist educator, even if it's just, water safety instruction or something, because it's about learning how to break down for students the process that to you seems just really straightforward and easy, and walk in their shoes a little bit and figure out, okay, this isn't, maybe this isn't obvious, and also learning how to create an atmosphere that's comfortable for the students so that they feel safe to try and safe to not have that inner critic barking at them. Like one of the things that I've seen over the years is just how with the increase of testing, and filling in the little gray circles for the students who are working on the computer, yes, no, multiple choice. What I feel is lost is that the children are they are believing that there's only it's A, B, C, or D, or yes or no, and there's no gray area, and there's no room for the 5,000 other possibilities that might be out there for something, for a task, for problem solving. And that's a shame, because that's a loss for everyone. We need creative problem solving, we need imagination, we need all of those things, and so just an example, I'll give you an example of something that I saw happen in a classroom, and then something that I think could have been better. Is I was working with a child in a school where we were making shadow puppets, simple black shadow puppets. That's all we had time for. And so I was talking to the kids about drawing with shapes and how, okay, say you're going to draw a snowman. What shape is the snowman's head? Everybody shouts out circle, and everybody can draw a circle. And I always say it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. It can just be, try to get the kids comfortable. And usually after that, they're good to go, and they start drawing all over. But this one little boy I found in a corner, and he was just a ball of tears. And he was sitting there with his pencil, sobbing, and I sat down next to him and I just said, "What's wrong, honey?" You know, and he's like, "I can't draw." And I said, "Well, that's okay. Let's walk through it. What do you want to draw?" And he was like, a dog. I said, "Okay, all right. Let's draw a dog. You know, what shape do you think the dog's head might be?" He's like, "Rectangle?" And then he looked at me like I might hit him. And I said, "No, rectangle's fine. Let's draw a rectangle." And he drew a very wobbly little rectangle. And then I walked him through, bit by bit, each part of the puppet. And we had just gotten it drawn, and he was just starting to perk up and draw his eyes and everything. And the teacher came by and said, "You didn't try at all on that. You know, start over." And it just breaks my heart because I was only there for that day with that child, and yet he had to be with that teacher every day. And I understand teachers are under a lot of stress, and that they have ideas about who these students are because they work with them every day. The thing about this student is, I think that he'd had a lot of messages that he wasn't good at many things, and therefore he shouldn't even try. And when he did try, he got that kind of feedback. And so I was trying to open up to him the possibility that there might be something that he was okay at, that he could succeed at. And so what I love about art is that it's a possibility for, I'm going off on a rant here, I'm sorry, but it's
That's
really
okay.
a passion about. I love that art is a place where children and grown-ups and everyone gets, it's okay that there's not, there shouldn't be somebody standing over them doing this. It should be, if your dog has a very wobbly rectangle for a head, then that's that dog and he's very sweet and that's fine, you know. Or if your pig wants to be polka dotted, then let it be polka dotted. It doesn't have to be like the storybook classic thing, you know. There should be room for everybody's pig and everybody's dog, you know, and everybody's pig dog. So you know what I'm saying is, so I really feel like that's the key is for everybody's creativity is feeling like there's permission to
definitely.
Yeah.
I understand. As an educator, I completely understand, and you know, I am a performer, but I'm also a Spanish teacher, so I see some of that reality in the schools where I work as well. Recently, I interviewed a couple of language educators, and they were given some ideas and tips, and one of them talked about assessment, and we all been through the usual true or false assessment, where you read a text and then you go true or false, like everything is defined, living, you know, you have to get it right or get it wrong. And she offered a variant of that, which I haven't thought about it before, and it was great, that instead of saying true or false statements, designing probable or possible statements. So the text says there is a dog walking down the street. The dog crosses the street to meet another dog. Question: where was it safe to cross the street? Or it was safe to cross the street. Well, it's possible or probable depending on what part of town. Did the two dogs speak the same language? Well, you know, and starting playing with the imagination, but also with the thinking aspect of it, and bringing your own idea, so that not everything is black and white. And I thought that was a great way to create assessment where you have to consider the context, but still have to do some thinking, some higher level process, and also imagination. So that was one of the tips that I learned from her that I'm eager to try in my own classes, and that was specific for language learning, but I think it could be applied for any other aspect. In your experiences teaching, what are some of the top tips for new artists who also want to be educators in the classroom, bringing the art to the classroom?
I would say find some arts educators that you think do a good job and shadow them. ask if you can assist, just to get the experience of watching how they handle things. That's the top one. I would say also, I mean, just thinking again about trust, comfort, without being wishy-washy. I mean, you do have to have a bag of tricks, as you know, to rein things in when it's getting wild and crazy in the classroom. Whatever it is, or whatever, something to get the class to, not go.
Yes, get the basic classroom management techniques, or
right, exactly. You need that, but I think to teach, it's best to watch great teachers and learn from them, and you can do that by assisting. I mean, you could go to school for it too, but for puppetry, really, that isn't required. What's required is knowing how to do it and then knowing how to teach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. So let me bring you back a little bit to you now, to you, the artist. So you were talking about this child that having trouble finding his drawing in a way. I see that as finding his own voice, his way to express himself or herself, and probably because of all these external voices that he or she was hearing. What about your voice as an artist? Have you found your own voice?
I'm always looking for it. Sometimes I misplace it, under the sock, or
Was it as easy as finding what is it, Fufu voice?
Fufu? No, I don't think anything was easy after that. But it was one thing that I have learned is that is that sort of allowing in the various possibilities and not automatically censoring them. And also just that whatever it is that I do usually involves more than one strength or form. That I am, because I am a word person, sometimes it'll be words and images, or it'll be images and handmade things, or all three, or sometimes I do textile art. For example, I do fabric and stuff, but that means that I'll embroider poetry into it, and I'll do surface treatment. Or so I guess it's just knowing that I'm not a person who really can just stick to one form. That I need to be able to have the possibility of play always in what I'm working with. Yeah.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Yes, very nice. And talking about voice and talking about languages, I said hola at the beginning of the show because I know you are bilingual. You can speak Spanish and English, and now a little bit of sign language too.
Working on it.
And I know you have performed to all kinds of audiences, but also to native speakers, Spanish native speakers. How was that experience or experiences to you?
Well, at first it was really terrifying because I was hoping, that I was doing okay and that people weren't just like, who is this gringa? Like, what? She's terrible. I can hardly stand to listen to her. But people were actually very sweet and very positive, and they laughed in different places. I made sure that I had the script translated by a native speaker, and that my director for the Spanish version was also a native speaker. And so that helped. But still, it's just that little bit harder for me because I would say, while I did spend an awful lot of time living in Spanish-speaking countries, and I do get to speak it fairly regularly here, it is a little bit harder for me, and so I have to really make sure that I rehearse. With Vanilla and the Pink Tiger show in English, I don't need to rehearse anymore before I go out. But I always have a rehearsal in Spanish because I need to get that muscle memory back with the Spanish, just to make sure that I'm there to access that channel. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean. And as you mentioned, I do have a show, The Paper Boats, which I'm doing this summer. I'm very happy. I'm going to be doing a tour throughout several libraries in the Twin Cities and near counties where I tell stories in different languages. And I don't speak all those languages, but I learn phonetically, and it's always, it's kind of a passion and also a challenge for myself, but it's a lot of fun. So I always have to rehearse those languages. Det var en gång tre böcker som skulle gått till sätt och göra så fett. I don't have to speak Norwegian. I just have to speak stage Norwegian. I have to sound like it's a language, and it's a lot of fun. And I hope to do. Of course, I do also bilingual shows, and I hope to do more of that in the future. I hope to see you more in the future doing bilingual shows. Talking about future collaborations.
That could be fun. That's another show that I want to bring back. It's a bilingual show called Bate Bate Chocolate. And I need to repurpose it for a two-person show. Who do I know that's bilingual?
Okay, we'll see. Yeah. So there's no better learning platform than doing it, and not just reading from books. But talking about books, I don't know, that word just popped out in my head. You've been working on a children's book, Nala and the Pink Tiger. Or is the book called Nala Goes to the Madhouse?
Well, my first book is called Nala and the Pink Tiger, and that was published in 2012. And my second book was just published in December of 2014, and that is called Nala Goes to Mad Mouse City. And they're both about my niece, Nala, who is a very mischievous little girl. And speaking of imagination, woo! Yeah.
So tell me more, how did you get into children's book? You're always working with words, but I have seen you in the context of doing a show and putting your words in your creative process in a performance. But now this sounds like it's rare, it's on the page. How did you come to that work, and what do you like about it?
Well, I've always loved children's books. You know, my mom always took us every Saturday to the library, and we would get a big pile of picture books, and just one of my favorite things ever. And so I've always wanted to do that. And, you know, lots of people say, I've always wanted to write a children's book. And, you know, and it seemed to me like, again, like just like with the puppetry, it seemed like this far-off thing that would, you know, that's something other people do, and I couldn't do that. But one night after playing with my niece, I woke up with this story just complete in my head. And I grabbed a piece of paper and storyboarded it out. And that was in 2010, and it took me another year at least to find the style that I wanted to illustrate it in, because I'm not a trained visual artist, which is probably apparent to a lot of people. But I make a lot of color shadow puppets, and so I started experimenting with layers of paper and light and cutouts. And that's where I found the style that I wanted to do for Nala and the Pink Tiger. And so I continued that when I did the second book, Nala Goes to Mad Mouse City. And so that's where those two connect, where the puppetry and the book connects is, you know, again, being that visual and verbal person. And also, you know, because you know this, creating time-based art, I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see a show and be like, you know, remember it years later. But there is something that's nice about having something that you can hold in your hand and that you can give to your kids. And when you're gone, you know, or not your kids, but your nieces and nephews or whoever, you know, like when you're gone, there's still that thing. And so that's kind of something that I like about books, you know.
Of course, yes, I understand. I've been toying with that idea myself. I only have a little experience with that, collaborating with Marie, Olof's daughter, and we both did a little visual and very short book online. It was an ebook, so that was a great experience. And in the future, when I'm more mature, right now I'm just an infant, I might get myself to do something in that realm, because I also like working with children and performing for children a lot. Now, you also have shows that correspond to these books, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do you work on translating the book to the puppet stage? Or do they both go hand in hand? It's like when you see a great book and then they make a movie of it, and some people's like, oh, but it's not like the book. How does it work for you, or was it?
Mm-hmm.
both concepts at the same time, or the show first? The chicken or the egg? The book or the puppet show? What's first?
Well, in the case of the Nala books, particularly, it was the story and the book first. But because I am a puppeteer and because that's the way my brain works, I immediately thought, wouldn't it be great to have a show to go with it? It is a different process. What works on the page, especially because what I do, like when I write a book, it's not just, you know, picture plus narrative. There's also speech bubbles and things like that, because I think about dialogue a lot. So there are, you know, that doesn't quite work in the same way on the stage. And there are some things in children's puppet shows in particular, they're just conventions or just things that, you know, he's behind you, or, you know, let's all get blah, blah, blah to come out at the count of 3, 1, 2, and then everybody, you know, there's just some things that work with kids' audiences, and like bridging that, you know, like, you know, making the kids feel like they have a connection immediately to whatever is going, you know, on the stage. I think your character that you were in It's All About Time is kind of that, your big silly clown character. It's not all about time. What is it? Margaret McCreary's The Time Circus?
On Time Circus.
Yeah, All-Time Circus. The All-Time Circus is very much the character that connects with the audience, you know. And in my shows, my Nala shows, it's Nanny Bucket is the name of the clown. And so Nanny Bucket is, you know, kind of the one that talks to the audience, and the kids like that when you come out and interact with them and stuff like that. So you have to, so when I was writing my script, you know, there is no Nanny Bucket character in the books. You know, she came about because she had to be the one to, you know, work with the kids and that kind of thing.
Right.
So.
Excellent. Yeah. So, are you presenting this show for the new book anywhere? Tell us.
Yes, I am presenting it at In the Heart of the Beast Puppet and Mask Theater on 1500 East Lake Street in Minneapolis. Oops. Are you still there?
I am still here.
Ah, yes, you are. There you are. Yes, at 1500 East Lake Street in Minneapolis, and there are 2 shows: 10 o'clock and noon. And at 11 o'clock, in between the shows, there's a hands-on puppet making workshop. And the performers in that show are myself and Seth Eberly. And it's directed by Allison Heimstead. And there'll be music by Jim Parker. Sorry, I have a friend called Jim Proctor too. Jim Parker. And the tickets are $8. And the make and take is $5 per child and $3 per adult. You don't have to go to the make and take. And after the noon show, we'll have a party. So you can come. There'll be books for sale. There'll be treats from the Mayday and coffee. So you would like it. And just come for the food. Stay for the show.
Excellent. So here I'm showing our on this video, on this live show, to the information for people who want to come. March 7th, here's the address, 1500 East Lake Street, and the times again: performance is at 10 and at noon, and the make and take workshop at 11. Excellent. This is great.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and it's nice to see there is more than just one component of a show, or the creative process. The show and the book and the make and take and the party, of course.
The party
and food.
Party. Yep.
Party and food. So I have one more question for you, which is, what's next? What's next in the chapter of Anne Sawyer-Aitch?
Oh my gosh. Well, another book, actually. This one is not a Nala book. I have been taking classes from Kat Corrigan in painting, and that kicked me off into an area of painting animals, and particularly small animals sleeping. And I have no idea why. It's just something that I started doing earlier this summer, and I have this little collection now of like little hedgehogs and things sleeping. And you know, when I posted those pictures on Facebook, people have given positive feedback, and so I thought, you know, Allison Heimstead, who does the Winter Dreams show at the Heart of the Beast, was saying, oh, wouldn't it be fun to hang this show at, you know, during Winter Dreams? And Amy Balstead, who is also a puppeteer and a poet, and I are going to collaborate in making sort of a toddler kind of board book about sleeping and winter and small animals with these paintings, and Amy will be making the poetry for it. So that's kind of one of the projects, plus the Julie Gustavo, illuminated world domination project.
Great. Awesome. And I'm sure that people can hear all about it on your website, which I'm going to share now. Amy Sawyer-Aitch here. So it's amysawyer.puppets.com. So I'm here that people will hear all about that and continue following you on your writing, illustrating, teaching, directing, performing adventure.
You forgot eating cookies.
Eating cookies, of course.
Cookie eating is very important.
Perfect, perfect. And I want to thank you for taking your time on Sunday to talk to me and to share. We were talking pre-show. These questions are very hard for us artists. We never know how to answer these questions, and you did wonderfully. And so I appreciate your time and the effort to share your passion and all the different things you do.
Sure, thank you. And just so you know, I got all my answers from Answering Interviews for Dummies. Get it at Amazon, no problem. They've got a whole section for firefighters, puppeteers, cheese tasters. Yeah.
Okay, great, awesome. So now everybody knows. Yep. Thank you very much one more time, and thank you everyone for watching. Feel free to post any comments on this video on YouTube, and I will also post in the description of this video the information for Anne's show and her website, so you can keep following her. And I hope to see everyone again on the Educators Performance Creator Show. Gracias, thank you.
Gracias, que te vaya bien. Bye bye.
Gracias.